Back again with yet another B9S5, and as you can see, the engine has been removed after 58,000 miles and some change, so pretty low mileage. But the reason why I have removed the engine is because the owner wants to do a rocker arm prevention, which is very smart because it's a lot cheaper to get the rocker arms replaced now rather than wait till they fail and cause camshaft damage. Or we even had one case where the rocker arm fell off and it managed to punch a hole through the cylinder head where the intake manifold is, and a lot of engine oil from the cylinder head went into the intake manifold, and once it's in the intake manifold it went down into the combustion chamber, and because oil can't be compressed, the conrods got bent, so that turned into a full engine rebuild, all because of failed rocker arms. So definitely really smart to do it before they fail. I've got a couple of videos on my channel now regarding the rocker arms on these engines, and there's always a couple people in the comments saying, why do you bother taking the engine out when you have more than enough space to be able to remove everything and change rocker arms with the engine still in the car? And yeah, sure, you can replace the rocker arms that way, but it probably takes maybe 2 hours, 1.5 hours to remove the engine from the car. It's really simple. There's a couple wiring connectors, coolant hoses on the front. Down there, you need to disconnect the suspension from the top, unbolt the shock absorbers. The prop shaft just needs to be unclipped. That stays in place on the car. A couple coolant hoses on the back as well, fuel lines, and that's pretty much it. Once the engine is out and it's like this, you can walk around it, you can look at everything, you can get a closer look at everything. You have loads of space, all the space in the world you want. And whenever we replace the rocker arms on these engines and the engine is out, we remove the intake manifolds and we do carbon cleaning on the intake valves, because you'll be surprised how dirty they do get, because this is a direct injection engine, so the fuel never gets to clean the intake valves, so they do get really carboned up. And there's no way really of removing these manifolds with the engine still in the car, because this chassis is right there. You have literally no space. So yeah, we do rocker arms, carbon cleaning. Typically we also replace the water pump, because that's usually leaking from over here. Or another common issue with these engines is the water pump will fail internally, and then coolant will start to migrate into this coolant line. It will make its way up from there and into this valve. And a good way to know if your water pump is failing is there will be a puddle of coolant underneath this valve, and if you see coolant right there, then you know that your water pump has failed. And another thing that we typically do is we remove the turbo and we reseal the oil filter housing and the oil cooler, which is underneath the turbo, because the oil filter housing usually starts to leak and then it completely covers the engine with oil, which I think is what happened with this engine at some point. And it does look like it's pretty dry in the middle, so I think someone has already done that. So that's one less job that we don't have to do. The first thing I'm going to do is remove this cover, and then I'm going to get the exhaust off so that we have a little bit more space to get those fuel lines and coolant pipes out the way. The exhaust is off. We now have a lot of space on the back. Next thing I'm going to do is remove all of these intake pipes, and then I think once those are off, then we can move on to removing all of the wiring loom. Ooh. Very oily in there. So now that I've stripped down the wiring on both banks, I'm going to move onto the back of the engine. I'm going to remove this water pump. Some of these coolant hoses, pipes need to come out of the way. This fuel line also needs to come out of the way as well. So now that all of those components are out the way and we have access to these rear timing covers, I'm going to move on to removing the high pressure fuel pump, all the coil packs, fuel rail, injectors, and then we'll be removing the rocker cover or camshaft carrier, whatever you want to call it. So sometimes you get lucky and all the injectors will come out with the fuel rail when you remove it, but today I got very unlucky and all of them stayed inside the cylinder head. So we're gonna have to pull them out, and to pull the injectors out we'll be using this tool. I'll leave a link in the description, and we're gonna need this little slide hammer and this piece. I've got everything stripped off the top of the cylinder head. I've got everything organised into bank 1 and bank 2. All the bolts separated so that when I'm putting it back together, everything goes where it should. Now we need to take these caps off and the vacuum pump as well. And then we can move on to removing the rear timing covers. So both rear timing covers are off, and now we can see the cam adjusters, and they look pretty good. The teeth look in pretty good shape, and that's also another reason why we remove the engines, because sometimes these sprockets are really worn out, and then by the time you've gone this far with the engine still in the car, you strip it down to this point and then you see, the cam adjusters are no good. You're thinking, well, I've got to replace the cam adjusters. A really good idea to replace the chains at the same time as well. The customer decides he wants to replace the chains at the same time. You're able to simply just take the subframe off, take the gearbox off, and you're pretty much there. Whereas if you're doing the rocker arms with the engine still in the car, you would have to spend a lot of time messing around, taking the gearbox off with everything in place. And then you'll be scratching your head thinking, I probably should have removed the engine to begin with. So the next step will be to lock the crankshaft into the timing position. So we need to spin the crankshaft over, and this hole needs to line up with there's some thread there, and a locking tool threads through into there. And then also you need to be careful because these camshafts are very easily put back in upside down, and then you have to do the job again. So this notch needs to be up, and this smaller half moon needs to be parallel with that as well. The crankshaft is pinned, half moon is up, the notch is at the top, timing looks okay, and the phasers also have a timing position. If you see that little notch there, that needs to line up in between those two grooves, and that goes for all of them. And this one is all the way down there. So now we need to remove those camshaft adjusters. So we need this holding tool to be able to hold the phaser in position, and then we can take this all that's left to do is remove all of these bolts all the way around. Now we can pop the cam carrier off. See what we find. That's a good start. All the rocker arms are in place. They all look pretty good. So now we can move on to bank 2. Good news, all 24 rocker arms are still in place and all the needle bearings are inside of them, so that's good. So that means that the camshafts are in good condition. They don't have any scoring on any of the lobes, but that was to be expected. There wasn't any weird tapping noise. So now we can move on to cleaning all the silicon off, and then I'll be removing the intake manifolds. And I like to do it now because obviously the camshaft is off, so that means all of the intake valves will be closed, so that when I'm walnut blasting them, there'll be no chance of any walnuts going into the cylinders. And to be able to remove the intake manifolds, we do need to unbolt the subframe on both sides, and I'll be lifting the engine up just a little bit, mainly because of this pipe. As you can see, that T30 is very close to this engine mount, and I'm not too sure, but I think the owner wants to put some 034 Motorsport engine mounts on. So next step, get the engine crane over here, unbolt the subframe, lift the engine up a little bit, and then we can remove the intake manifolds. This is the majority of the things that we're going to be replacing when we're going to be doing the rocker arms. So we have 24 new rocker arms, and the updated ones have much bigger needle bearings. This is the part number, because I know everyone always asks about it. We have 2 new tensioners. We have 4 new valves. We have intake manifold gaskets. We have a vacuum pump gasket. We have 3 of these intake gaskets. We have these ones for the cam carrier. We also replaced the upper timing chain guide. We also have a new PCV gasket as well. But it looks like we've run out of all of the water pump and everything, so we need to get that ordered. Oh, and we're also going to need an oil filter as well. Everything is nice and clean. All of the valves are clean. Put the new gasket in. All I've got to do is bolt it in and then move on to the other side. Now that the carbon cleaning is done, I can start unpackaging all these rocker arms, put them into this bag, soak them in oil before we put them in. Off camera, I've cleaned all the covers in the Aquablast machine, and this is the difference between the new rocker arm and the old design of rocker arm, which fails. So the needle bearings are a lot bigger in the new one. So now that everything has been cleaned, degreased, we can start putting the new gasket onto this camshaft carrier. And one useful thing to know is to align this camshaft carrier back onto the cylinder head. There's actually some dowel pins, well, a place where you can put your own dowel, and this will go through this way. And that will go into this hole and one up there to help you align that camshaft carrier onto the cylinder head. I've got both camshaft carriers in place. I've used a marker pen so that you can see a lot better what I'm talking about. As you can see, this half moon up here is a little bit smaller than the one on the bottom, so this is how it's supposed to be. And then the intake camshaft is a lot easier to reference because it has a notch, so that needs to be facing upwards. Bank one is a little bit finicky because to be able to fit the tool you need to take it apart and balance this exhaust camshaft on the valves, and then you'll be able to move this camshaft up and push the tool in place. You can lock the camshafts before you bolt it on, but that's how I prefer to do it. As long as the camshafts are locked in position, then it's all good. And crucial, the crankshaft also needs to be pinned. The thing which I should probably mention is when you're putting bank 2 back on, you need to make sure that they both meet perfectly, because if they don't, then you won't be able to put the vacuum pump in. But if you use the dowel pins, then you should be okay. But you can also just bolt the vacuum pump in place, and that will also center it. So these valves get torqued to 30 Newton meters, then 35 degrees. But whilst you're torquing them up to spec, you need to counter hold the camshaft phaser, because if you don't, then you'll have camshaft crankshaft correlation faults. So now that I've turned the engine over a couple times and rechecked the timing and I'm happy with it, I can begin putting the rear timing covers back on, and then I can begin putting all of the injectors, fuel rail, coil packs and all the wiring back onto the engine, and then we can begin replacing all of the cooling parts on the front of the engine. So I've got this thermostat seal ring back into place. Now I can put back in the new thermostat. I've also given these pipes a quick clean in the aqua blast machine. They look virtually brand new again. Now we're just going to fit the new seals on there and we can get them back onto the engine. So now that everything has been put back together, I can put the engine back into the car, get everything connected back up again and start it up. That about wraps it up for this convertible S5. So we replaced the rocker arms, done the carbon cleaning, and we also replaced all the water stuff on the front. I've gone for a drive. The car's fine, it drives perfectly, it boosts well, there's no tap-in or anything like that. The owner also wanted to put on a middle silencer delete, so that's probably one of the best mods that you can do if you want to have a bit more sound without sounding too crazy. It does free up the exhaust quite a lot. So I think in total I probably spent around 20 to 24 hours working on this car, somewhere around there. If you're curious, because if you maybe own one of these cars and you want to get the same kind of service done, I think we charge somewhere around £4,000. So that's rocker arms, carbon cleaning, all the genuine gaskets, and basically anything that we remove we replace with a new gasket. The water pump and everything like that is obviously a little bit extra, but £4,000 is the base job. But if you are attempting to do this job yourself, I hope you found this video informative. I hope it helped you out a little bit. I did give quite a lot of pointers on timing the engine and aligning the cam carriers, so I hope you found it useful. But that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.